Hello, everybody. Welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I am Wheeler, and joining me today I have a Jer.
Hello.
And Alex.
Serge isn't here, but my water glass got really big. You figure out what that means.
Oh my god, and a Ben's mustache. Why is that glass so large?
It definitely has nothing to do with Serge not being here.
Great. Anyways, just before we get started, I want to give a thank you to everybody from our Patreon. That's patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. It's because of you that we're able to get Alex such a big mug. And speaking of Alex and his big mug, starting things off with best card you are not playing. What do we got?
It's the Girl Vampire Hex Mage.
What's the card do?
So black Vampire Shaman 2/1, first strike, and it has an activated ability: sacrifice Vampire Hex Mage, remove all counters from target permanent. So this card was good when it was printed, and every single set it gets better because it one-shots planeswalkers.
That's pretty good.
Doesn't matter how much loyalty they have, it's dead. So, but wait, it's also just really good, because black for a 2/1 first strike is fine in like pretty much any deck that
it
you
blocks incredibly well. Attacks.
Yeah, aggro
reasonably
players hate it.
Where's equipment incredibly well.
It's even 2 points of Black Devotion.
Yeah.
Which is
Get those
which is
pips.
pretty wild. Like, the card's just super good. You have like little corner case stuff, like you can block Batter Skull or Worm Coil, and before damage, like take counters off something that doesn't matter. Deny them life gain. You know, that's a little like out there, but the card's just very solid.
Get a surprise Merit Lodge in early, if that's something
Yeah.
you're about.
Yeah, that's another thing you can do. I've never seen. I mean, I think I've heard about decks that do depths with Hex Mage, but it's usually Thespian Stage.
I've dabbled.
It's popped up a bit. We've talked about the power of like modal spells and cards like Murderous Rider or Hero's Downfall being able to kill a planeswalker, which is super necessary in 2020, and well, doing another thing. It's just this other thing happens to be a 2-power creature with first strike.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. It's not bad. And reusable, right?
Yeah, I mean, regrowing creatures a lot easier than regrowing spells.
Because sacrifice puts the card into the graveyard, which is a great segue to the theme of today's episode. Now, Halloween is a short 7 months away, so we thought that we would dabble in the graveyard just to get ahead of everybody else. We're talking about the graveyard in Canadian Highlander.
My favorite zone.
100-card singleton format. It's your favorite zone. I think one of the reasons why this episode was a good idea is that we all like the graveyard. And I think other people that play this format like the graveyard. Jarrett, how important is the graveyard to Highlander?
It's super important, Ben, and I'll tell you why. Almost every deck in the format utilizes the graveyard in some way, either as a resource or even goes so far as to use it as an engine in some cases, be it delve spells and even non-blue delve spells. The black delve creatures are very strong. Murderous Cut sees a bunch of play. Become Immense is something that people don't play around and often die to. Magmatic Sinkhole is one of the most played cards from Modern Horizons, which was one of the best sets for Canadian Highlander ever.
Yep.
It's real good.
Yeah, there's Savine's Reclamation is a card that I was way off base on when it first got printed.
That was a real sleep.
Just like,
yeah.
I've started putting it in almost every deck I build. I'm like, oh, I should splash white for Sevrek.
Well, I mean, it's like any flashback spell, There's a lot that are playable in Highlander because they're just good.
I can't remember a non-dredge deck that I've played in the past 3 months that hasn't had Savine's Reclamation in it. Card is kind of absurd. For those not familiar with it, it's 2 and a white, sorcery. Return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this spell was cast from a graveyard, you may copy the spell, and you may choose new targets for the copy, and it has flashback for 4 and a white.
This is just a 3-for-1.
Yep.
And it makes Gifts Ungiven insane, Intuition insane.
Yeah.
Lets you free roll, Gamble, and Entomb in a bunch of decks that just shouldn't get to play those cards.
I'm so stoked about getting to play Gamble in more decks.
It's
and Entomb.
Well, I mean, they're kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, like Gamble is Entomb wearing a cowboy hat.
And especially with the new printing of cards like Underworld Breach and Wishclaw Talisman, where now the combo engines and tutors
Are permanent based.
are permanents. Yeah. This isn't just getting back like Knight of the Reliquary or Strip Mine. It's often getting back the old Underworld Breach Black Lotus, and you're like, oh, I win.
But like getting back Isamaru or like a Thalia or whatever is also
Perfectly fine, yeah.
totally reasonable.
Or even just getting back a fetch land and going 3 to 5. Like that's mostly its floors. Like a 3-mana ramp spell that's going to sit in your graveyard and threaten a ton of value later on.
Get back your Vampire Hexmage.
Hey, tying it all together. Well, that's our episode. No, it's the flexibility of that card, and as like the abundance of different decks and ways that we can use the graveyard to our advantage in our format leads to like a dynamic that you will find in other kind of eternal formats, but for us it's really hitting every kind of archetype. Like everything cares about it.
Well, in a sort of like 60 card constructed format, whether it's eternal or especially like a rotating format like standard, you tend to get to utilize one graveyard-centric mechanic per deck, whereas Highlander gets this increasingly huge library of graveyard-related mechanics that start to like synergize with each other, because you have like Delve and Threshold and Dredge and Escape,
Flashback.
Yeah, just they keep adding mechanics that care about the graveyard, and a bunch of them fit together well. Some of them don't fit together well, which you have to sort of plan around. But
right, like in standard right now, you have mechanics that work with the graveyard, but like nobody's showing up at an FNM and complaining like, oh, I got killed by the Surveil Scavenge Escape deck. Right, just doesn't happen.
They didn't print enough Surveil cards. I think that mechanic is sweet.
It's a pretty cool mechanic.
Yeah, then I don't think that we got a lot of playables, unless I'm missing some.
Sinister Sabotage and Mission Briefing is what comes to mind.
Yeah.
I think the like Scribe.
Oh, Discovery Dispersal.
Yeah, that one's like definitely not a staple, but I think it's playable.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll see that mechanic come back.
Speaking of comeback, we're going to go across the different styles of decks in the format, aggro, combo, mid-range, etc., and talk about how they can each use the graveyard to their advantage. And coming back is one thing that threats in aggressive decks tend to do. If they're looking for any kind of longevity. Alex, you've been known to play with the graveyard in your aggressive and creature-based decks.
Yes,
speak on this.
Yes, I have. One of the design goals of Black Mold was to make it more resilient, because it can't match the sort of like speed and reach of something like Mono Red, and never has any hope of doing so. So it has to play to other strengths, and one of those is resiliency, which is to say, you can kill my threats, they'll be back, so your removal is garbage.
Yeah.
And you can claw your way back from a sort of blowout situation, like you get Wrathed, and 2 of your creatures come back immediately, a third one comes back like next turn. So you get to stack your deck with like stuff like Scrap Heap Scrounger, Bloodsoaked Champion, Bloodghast. There's a bunch of them. You have to pick them carefully, because you want ones that are going to reliably come back.
Right. And
there's been a lot printed, actually.
I was going to say, that's actually sort of a theme that Wizards has been sort of going back to recently, is the two power 1-drop in black that can't block or like enters the battlefield tapped but has some ability to come back. Like Dread Wanderer is another one that was in Amonkhet.
There's probably like a tier list, because there's like Dread Wanderer and the other one whose name escapes me. Gutterbones.
Dread Wanderer, Gutterbones, Bloodsoaked Champion are the big 3
Gravecrawler
drops. Gravecrawler,
Gravecrawler.
of course, Gravecrawler.
And they're all good.
With Well, yeah, that's the thing is like even just getting the front half of a 2-power 1-drop is usually like, good enough to jam, and then like if it ever comes back, that's just pretty much gravy.
Yeah, it just gives you a little bit more late game if things go a bit sideways.
I want to talk about that specifically as well. Going back to at the beginning when you had mentioned that you're not going to realistically have the same kind of reach as other decks.
Well, not in terms of just like nugging them to the face.
Yeah, I think that's a thing that we've talked about when we talk about when people are like, why is Boros or Rakdos, like, what does that deck look like? And I think one of the issues of that deck is that often they try to replicate stuff like Mono Red, stuff like Death and Taxes or whatever.
That's the weirdest thing.
They don't get there.
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing about those decks is that like you have to play to a different strength. Otherwise, why are you playing not Mono Red?
Right.
It's like you can't take Mono Red and enhance it by adding a color. Not in the sense that you can make Mono Red better. You can go in a different direction, which may have
different strengths.
Yeah, different strengths and different utilities and play differently. But I think it's a mistake to try and improve on the exact game plan that Mono Red is trying to enact.
I think that's why one of the reasons the Gruul slide deck is somewhat successful is because I think that's one of the only ways to actually improve upon the speed of Mono Red. Because I actually think the Gruul slide deck on average, uninteracted with, is a little faster than Mono Red.
Nuts.
But whenever you try to do that with add like the sprinkling of black or white cards, you're not actually improving on Mono Red. You're just reducing the consistency.
Yeah, I mean, like Gruul, I think you're probably onto something. I think the main reason for that is it gets access to these like
pump it up.
Incredible pump spells that just have like a really high ratio of cost to effect.
Well, yeah, like the Colossal Might, Collision Colossus,
yeah, you're paying
Core Clan Rampager, Berserk.
You have
there's so many of them.
Yeah, you've got a lot of cards that are like 1 or 2 mana that add like at least 4 damage.
So if we're not going faster, right, because we don't have the tools and we don't want to be a worse version of those kind of decks.
Yeah, you got to be more.
We got to go a bit. Stubborn's a great way of putting it. And then I guess you also want some like longevity to your gameplay, and that can come from later game threats as well. Like we can extend it beyond the decks like Black Mold, which of course will have the recursive threats, but also just like Tarmogoyf.
Yeah,
Tarmogoyf's just a card that
good cards.
It's pretty good.
Skoos.
I mean, it might be time to look at a deck like Rakdos again, because I think it has a lot of the tools for having a bit of that recursion as well, and that would be a good thing to play into. Because I mean, just off the top of my head, you get a couple of the Unearth creatures, like was it Shambling Remains?
I've
always wanted to jam that card. It's 1 red black for a 4/3, can't block. It's a zombie.
Yeah,
and it unearths for red black, which means you bring it back from the graveyard with haste, and then it dies it's exiled.
You
it's
exile
exiled
it
on the end step.
or if it leaves, it's like a replacement effect. If it would go anywhere, it just gets exiled.
Yeah, so it's like if you pitch it to something else or it gets killed, it comes back one more time with haste and just
can't be countered too, which is pretty important when you're grinding out against blue decks, especially. Using that as a clean segue, because there's another Rakdos card that comes back from the graveyard that we were talking about before we started filming. It has a little bit of a friend that sees some mid-range play too. So let's talk real quickly about Kroxa, the Titan of Death's Hunger.
Yeah.
Definitely didn't just see it on the monitor to guess it. Red-black for a 6/6 legendary Elder Giant. When Kroxa enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. Whenever Kroxa enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card, and then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card loses 3 life. Escape for black, red, exile 5 other cards from your graveyard, and then you cast it from the graveyard. And Kroxa is not best friends in this format, but often is paired with Uro. which...
Titan of Nature's Wrath.
Oh, Jeremy, can you tell us what Uro does and then talk about grinding in mid-range from the graveyard?
So one green blue, also a 6/6, also an Elder Giant. It also enters the battlefield. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you gain 3 life, then you draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So it's like turbo growth spiral. And it escapes for green, green, blue, blue, and exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. So I've had a bunch of experience playing this in my most recent Scape Shift deck, and it was a complete house. It overperformed. I was finding myself wanting to see this card in basically every matchup, and it single-handedly won multiple games against Mono Red.
Yeah, not putting the land into play tapped.
Oh!
Yep.
Is like shockingly big.
There were lots of times where, like, on turn 4 after casting a ramp spell, I could, like, play this, put a land in, and escape it in the same turn.
So, true or false, Highlander is a format that has a lot of cheap, efficient spells.
True.
Great. And so those spells can often just go to the graveyard.
Yeah, like Ponder, Preordain, Brainstorm, Sleight of Hand, Serum Visions, Gataxian, I could keep going.
Lightning Bolt, Thought Seize.
Blah, 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 blah,
exactly.
blah, blah, blah.
And
So-
we're not even, like, touching on, like, Mental Note and Thought Scour that are, like,
You're the ones that
real.
deliberately
Fetch
add more.
lands.
And also the amount of people who don't realize that those cards trigger when they attack is very high. There's a lot of non-standard players in Highlander, and they're like, when it attacks?
Yeah.
Womp, womp, blah, blah, blah,
So
blah,
it does something. Both of these cards are going to do something on the front, right? That are great. And then getting them back from the graveyard is surprisingly easy if you're making a concentrated effort to include cards in your deck that are good in Canadian Highlander.
Yep.
I think that's a fair assessment to say.
I mean,
And
we're
the
always
co-
getting more of them. I mean, like, we just had Ransack the Lab printed, which I love.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
card's dope.
It's,
That's definitely a Croxa engine there.
yeah, I mean, it's also just like, hey, it's a selection spell that isn't blue.
Yeah.
I get to play it. Ransack
Well,
the Lab.
it is also blue. It's strategic planning.
Yeah, okay.
And it's pretty good with blue cards too.
Yeah, it's 1 in a black sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 into your hand, the rest into your graveyard. So this bins 3 cards, including itself, and you get selection.
That's pretty good. Selection is important,
Card slaps.
which is also something that I think the aggro decks, the mid-range decks use very well in our format with the graveyard. We talked about how there's like a difference between a deck using the graveyard as like a resource and then using it for an engine. If we're talking a resource, this can be, I don't know, rattle off some mid-range cards that use the graveyard as a resource.
The Scarab God.
Yeah.
Any creature that has escape.
Yeah.
Any card that has delve, like Tassiger, Dig Through Time,
And
Tombstalker.
Titania.
did you realize
Titania, yeah.
if you fill your graveyard enough,
Yeah.
casting a regrowth is just demonic tutor?
Yeah, more and more when I'm playing non-combo decks, I just love having regrowth. Like it
Normal-
seems so weird to say because
It's just the card regrowth.
yeah, the card from
very
the very
good.
first set of Magic the Gathering.
It's
regrowth.
good.
Yeah, and like when we talk about some of the best cards that use the graveyard, a lot of them are cards that bring things back. Be it Scarab God, unfortunately reanimating stuff at instant speed and making a 4/4 and then draining you and then scrying and also being difficult to kill. Why does that card have all that text? And then Eternal Witness, just like cards, which is, well, a regrowth on legs. But it's just so important to have access to these kind of cards as well, because we're a singleton format, right? I mean, as much as we want to include, Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy and maybe Maelstrom Pulse or whatever it may be, you only get one Abrupt Decay. You only get one hostage taker or whatever rando
Silver
Sultai
bullet,
mid-range bullet card that you're looking for, and getting something out of it initially, great. But getting it a second time can be like the nail in the coffin against a lot of strategies like this. If we're talking about moving from, returning a thing once and then maybe again to I'm going to return something over and over and over. Stuff like Recurring Nightmare, which I think this whole table has had a couple of reps with Recurring Nightmare.
Meltoth.
For those of you not entirely familiar with this card, first off, yes, this card is legal in our format, and yes, that's correct. It's 0 points. 2 and a black for an enchantment that has an activated ability that is sacrifice a creature and return this enchantment to your hand, making it really difficult to stop. You return target creature from your graveyard to play. You can only use it as a sorcery, but that sounds pretty good.
It's pretty dumb. If you get it going, it's ridiculous.
Well, how do we get it going?
Usually with survival of the fittest, Ben.
Oh, well, that card is pointed. Thankfully.
Yeah.
/ unfortunately.
No,
But thankfully. Yeah. You don't want a free survival running around. Rexer is kind of like it's something that's been borrowed from, Rexer decks of olden days.
Yeah, type 1 vintage.
Yeah. But Survival of the Fittest, 1 and a green for an enchantment, pay a green, discard a creature card, search your library for any creature, and put it into your hand. Sounds pretty good. Pretty easy to stockpile your graveyard using this card, and then Recurring Nightmare to get it back.
The thing that really puts this over the top is that you can activate it as many times as you want for a green. So you will sometimes just get chains where you're like, get this, pitch this, get this, pitch this, get this, pitch this. So it's like,
And then when you eventually cast a creature, you just win.
Yep.
Yeah.
This card, survival, and to a lesser extent in our format, Recurring Nightmare, because not a lot of people are returning Great Whale. Though maybe more people should be returning Great Whale or Palancron. Take your pick.
The one I heard that was good is Runescarred Demon.
Yeah, that's also not bad.
Just run that back over and over again.
It finds Palancron or Great Whale.
Yeah. I Runescarred Demon for my Palancron. Actually, that sounds pretty good to me. But those cards, Survival sees a lot of combo play in our format. And that can kind of shadow what it does for mid-range decks.
Yeah.
But when you resolve this card and you're a mid-range deck, either of these cards, you're just off to the races, right?
Or alternatively, against the combo decks, they're reverse off to the races. They're stymied because you're just getting whatever toolbox creature you need, which there are so many.
Yeah.
And it's becomes so easy to stop them. It essentially turns any creature in your hand into a Green Sun Zenith.
It lets you rebuy the creatures over and over and over again. Again, creating the divide between hey, I'm doing this so that I can, blow up your artifact twice. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, the Academy deck doesn't still get there. They usually do. But when you get, say, an engine going of Recurring Nightmare or, a pet card that I have been shoving into lists that don't play black, Volrath's Stronghold.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say Tortured Existence.
No, but that's also
really
a good
excited.
one.
I like that card.
They're all from the same era. They're all from the same block. They really wanted to push it.
Stronghold's very good.
Yeah.
What's the other card like Tortured Existence? Is that the Pauper one or is it not?
Tortured Existence is the Pauper one.
What's the uncommon one?
Phyrexian Reclamation?
Yeah, you pay 2 life and you get a creature back.
So for those of you that haven't played Pauper or Pauper Cube, Tortured Existence is a 1 black enchantment that has pay 1, discard a creature, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand.
It's reverse survival.
Yeah, basically. And again, much like Survival, you could just keep doing it.
Sometimes as good as Survival. Not as often, but...
Yeah, well, you almost had me for a second there. And then, the Phyrexian Reclamation? Yeah, 1 black. One black enchantment, pay 1 and a black, pay 2 life, return target creature from the graveyard to your hand. So, again, using cards like this, when you're able to do it repeatedly, right? Once a turn, twice a turn, because you ramp up your mana base, your resources over time, what are they going to do?
Die.
Yeah, that's a good one. Another thing that mid-range decks can take advantage of, and when I think this is when the mid-range starts to turn into more of the like controlling side of mid-range, where you're just like locking down the environment. Yeah, you're locking down the environment. You know what? I'll stick with it. Life from the Loam. A pretty good card at doing that. Often paired with Wasteland, Strip Mine, whatever it may be. But
Cephalid Coliseum, you know.
Cephalid Coliseum, yes, of course. How could we forget?
It's insane with Dredge.
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's not bad. But like, you don't need much to make these cards function. I think that's why we're talking about them, as opposed to like Debtor's Knell or whatever. Like big donkey cards that are like, hey, you have to do 1 million flips and you have to pay me $20 and then you can start getting value, right? These cards don't ask for much. You can continue on your very merry mid-range way while using the graveyard and not really doing too much to stop you from, I don't know, slapping a questing beast onto the battlefield.
Yep.
Which seems pretty good.
That card's pushed.
Questing beast, the card with 80 words on it.
It has 6 abilities and all of them are good.
Yeah. Yeah, I recently came across the combat damage can't be prevented being a bit of an issue.
That's never good.
Yeah.
Every time I look at this stupid card, there's more that I've forgotten about.
That's the one that definitely comes up the least. But when it does,
Let's just recap Questing Beast real quick. 2 green, legendary. Sit down. This will be a bit of a tale. Let me tell you the tale of Questing Beast. 'Twas a legendary creature, beast. It had vigilance, death touch, and haste. Okay, that's pretty good. Oh, there's more. Questing Beast can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Next paragraph. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control.
not just itself.
Can't be prevented. Next paragraph. Whenever Questing Beast deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls. It is a 4/4/4/4.
You know, we did talk about Uro and Kroxa, which are from the last set, and we covered what they did, although they were very pertinent to the conversation. And usually we don't run over cards that are recent, right? That they're recently printed, they're still fresh in the mind. This card we should just explain every single time we come across it, because you're going to miss something. You're going to miss something.
And the thing is, people mix up the keywords all the time. Whenever I talk about the card, they're like, oh yeah, it has vigilance, trample, and reach.
You said reach, and I genuinely thought it had reach. Like, I just had a split second of being like
most people know it has 3 keywords, but at any given time, if anyone can name the keywords without like having the card in front of them, it's somewhat impressive.
Am I right in thinking that if they go True Name Nemesis and you go Questing Beast, you can just crash straight into them with impunity?
It's probably not a good idea for them to block without any Merfolk Lords in play.
Yeah. And for those of you at home that are going like, wow, these guys are really off base, Questing Beast has nothing to do with the graveyard. It does when it murders you and puts you 6 feet
into
under
the graveyard.
Yeah.
Did you know players change zone to the graveyard when they lose the... they don't.
Players change zones when they leave their LGS after going 0-2 from fighting Questing Beast. But on to Control, because Control has an interesting relationship with the graveyard that isn't as straightforward as something like Midrange or something like Combo. And thankfully we have Jeremy here to talk about Control. And for the, we're talking blue, right? We're going to be talking blue. We're not talking the Rock. We're not talking some Mardu Control deck here. No, that wasn't even a shot at you. That was just a general, we're going to be talking Dig Through Time.
Like, hard control, not the decks that sort of flirt between mid-range and control.
Oh yeah, we're probably casting a Condescend or a Mana Leak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is blue? If I'm a blue deck and I've got my graveyard, can I just ignore it?
I wouldn't.
Okay, great. Why?
Well, because in control, you're more likely to see the cards you've included in your deck that utilize the graveyard over the course of a game. It's important to not only make sure your graveyard is available as a resource, but specifically for control, it's important to leave specific types of cards in your graveyard as a resource. So when you're casting your first Delve spell of the game, say it's Dig Through Time or Logic Knot, whichever one it is, it's important if you don't have to cast it then, you have a choice of what cards you're exiling. It's actually important to make a conscious decision about which cards you're exiling. So later on when you draw your Torrential Gearhulk or your Snapcaster Mage, you have the correct options available to you.
The amount of people that I see playing control, like against mid-range, like a tapped out mid-range deck or whatever, and they have a Dig Through Time and 5 mana or 4 mana or whatever it may be, that will still
Delve
just
6
blindly
cards.
delve 6 cards. Like, it's worth noting that, again, yeah, you could be a deck where you might have cards like Intuition or like Flash Threats that you might want the mana for, but also just like if you have some extra wiggle room, like go ahead and keep that Path to Exile in your graveyard. You know, maybe you want to duress with a Snapcaster Mage later, or you know, Torrential Gearhulk Mystic Confluence. It's pretty good.
And just to expound upon that a little bit, generally you want to leave like a counter spell, a card selection spell, a removal spell. You want a draw spell. You want to try to leave like one of as many different things as you can to leave yourself the options later on.
You're not going to need both Opt and Ponder.
Exactly.
Yeah. You were saying, Alex?
No, it was interesting because you have to make similar decisions when casting Delve spells in aggro decks as well.
Yeah.
Partly because I play a number of incidental sort of like very low cost reanimate spells, so you tend to leave creatures in there so you can maybe unearth them. It's not as much of a thing, but you know, if you're casting a Delve spell or something that's gonna like burn cards from your graveyard, you do think about it a little bit.
Small incremental advantages of like properly exiling cards from your graveyard or whatever it may be, that's often what wins Highlander games, especially ones that go long enough that this zone ends up being the most relevant.
Well, especially in the grindy matchups when you're playing against somebody who knows their deck well, who knows the format well, and they're going to be making those decisions. You need to get every edge you can in those long matchups.
Yeah.
So.
What's interesting about what you were saying about how control utilizes the graveyard is, for the most part, you are using stuff like Snapcaster, Gearhulk, a lot of Delve spells where you are populating the yard and then burning it off as a resource. What I've found in a lot of the decks that I've been building is not quite like the opposite, but cards and effects that care about cards being in and staying in the graveyard and not being burned off. So you have mechanics like Delirium. There was another one. Well, there's a lot of cards that have been printed recently that care about the number of creatures in your bin. So instead of like
Scavenge? No.
I can't remember the name of it.
What the hell's the mechanic called from Golgari?
I know the one you're talking
Undergrowth.
about. Undergrowth.
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
So in that sense, the bigger your graveyard gets, the better it benefits the deck. And that's almost like it's actually a build around thing, because it's like, do you want to use it as gas or do you want to use it as like this big, power source that you'd build up?
Yeah, it's like what we were talking about earlier, using the graveyard as a resource, or in that case, it's sort of like an engine, but it's sort of like not a direct engine, it's an indirect engine. It's just like you're playing cards, like you're still probably playing cards like Grizzly Salvage and those types of decks, so you're fueling it, but then you're not burning it off to
Yeah,
utilize
exactly.
it.
And I
It
mean,
just
I
gets
found
to sit there.
myself building towards that because it's like I do make a kind of conscious decision. It's like, am I going to play delve spells or am I going to play undergrowth spells, like just top level? Because even mechanics like Threshold care about having the graveyard a particular size.
Werebear.
Werebear's so good.
Werebear.
It's sort of like when Hooting Mandrills got printed, Legacy Rug Delver got the community was up in arms for months because the threats in that deck traditionally were Delver of Secrets, Nimble Mongoose, and Tarmogoyf. And Hooting Mandrills looked really good on paper. Like it's pretty easy for that deck to get 5 cards in the graveyard, so most of the time it's going to be a 1-mana 4/4 Trampler, which is definitely something that deck's interested in. However, it's very much at odds with Nimble Mongoose and Tarmogoyf because you're likely removing some card types from the graveyard
Like,
for Tarmogoyf,
yeah, this is-
and you're
this
almost
is-
certainly goozling yourself on Thresh for the
It's
the
as old
goose.
as the like Tarmogoyf Scavenging Ooze conundrum, which sometimes you just like high roll both of them.
Yeah.
But those kind of represent the two camps of how you can utilize your graveyard. It's like whether it gets better by your graveyard populating itself or it gets better by like chowing down on it.
You mentioned cards where you're like you have to keep them in your graveyard. Like they basically have this stamp on them that says do not exile.
Yeah.
And Control has, I mean, Mystical Teachings and
Ancestral.
Well,
Like, unless you're casting.
that's what I'm getting to, is that when I play Control, I put like a mental stamp on like my Swords to Plowshares or my Lightning Bolt, my Ancestral, or matchup specific. Like if
Yeah.
I'm against, like if I'm on Jeskai and I have a Lightning Helix in my graveyard, I'm going to keep that Lightning Helix in my graveyard as long as I can. Is that something that you find when you play Control, Jer, that you also kind of like have this like I have like keep this unless I absolutely have to get rid of it?
Definitely. And in matchups, yeah, I think it's, as you say, very matchup specific. Like sometimes I'll have Dovin's Veto in a matchup and I'll just exile it because like it's another counter spell. But in a blue mirror, for example, that Dovin's Veto gets the stamp.
It's huge.
It's like it's not getting exiled because in a key counter war, if you can sneak in the Dovin's Veto, sometimes that makes the difference. If you're snapcasting it or gear hulking it, it gets around Spell Pierce, negate their veto, Force of Negation, the things that can only
Jared, does Mission Briefing still see play?
not so much in Control decks, more so in some combo decks that look for recursion. Like it's still great in High Tide. That's the only deck I play it in of the decks I play
because that was a
regularly,
Graveyard
but
Matters card that caused a big splash because people were like, "Oh my God, it's the new Snapcaster."
I
and
never
it wasn't, but
I never subscribed to the fact that it was as good as Snapcaster.
There were a lot of people at the time where it's just like, oh, because like Blue Moon and the idea that like I just need to recall as much as possible, and it helps you do that. One thing that I want to talk about is that I think now that we have a Cling to Dust from Theros, which
It's amazing.
It's very good. It's starting to creep into more people's minds as well.
Yeah.
It's one way that it's good against decks that don't use the graveyard exclusively, but it's also just good against kind of everything, and it gives Control another way to attack graveyard strategies or opposing graveyards. But for the longest time, and not every build will have something so directed towards that. So if you're a Control opponent and you're against the Scrap Heap Scrounger, Bloodghasty type of deck, like how do you survive? How do you stay afloat, or like not just get overwhelmed by like a horde of zombies and scrappy
I'm probably
boys
going to
coming
live to hate that card.
Cling to Dust?
Yeah,
Well, it's a really interesting dichotomy for what we're talking about, because it both hates the graveyard in an efficient, effective way that makes it a playable card, but it also, in certain matchups, sort of taxes your own graveyard and requires you to think about that aspect of it as well.
Such a cool card.
Yeah. I had a match like 2 days ago where I was just so confident I was getting there. Like I was playing a recursion style deck, and I was just like, what are they going to draw to just like shut me down? There's nothing they could do. I'm just going to return this card and lock them out. And then they had a Cling to Dust. I'm like, oh. So all of a sudden they've drawn a new card, gotten rid of my lock, and now I'm just kind of sitting there with my pants around my ankles, just being like,
It's so seldom that you get a more or less dedicated graveyard hate card that you don't feel bad including.
Yeah.
Like, Scavenging Ooze was maybe the last one I can think of, because it's like, you...
Death-Red Shaman was after
Okay, yeah,
Scavenging
Death-Red
Ooze.
Shaman. You don't really want to jam so many, like, specific, like, directed hate cards, because that's kind of watering down your game plan, you know, but you do have to make provisions for these things because there's no sideboarding.
right.
And a card like Cling to Dust is maybe perfect, because it's like, in your worst case scenario is what, it cantrips, right?
Yeah.
Just like, oh, I'll cycle this.
Gains you some life.
Well, while we're on this topic, what are some cards that you two play that are effective at denying these graveyard strategies? I've seen the new Ashiok pop up a bunch.
Yeah, that one's...
And that was a card I have never been a fan of. If I'm being honest, I've seen it played a bunch. It's been played against me a bunch, and it's been both like stone cold nuts and absolutely useless.
I don't get the hype for that card.
Okay.
I've seen people who are players that I absolutely respect. They put up
same.
results. They're great deck builders, and they have this Ashiok in their deck, and I'm just like, so how about that Ashiok, huh? Trying to be like, so like this isn't worth it, right? And they're like, oh no, it's great. It was the best card I played, and I just don't.
Yeah, that's
get it.
That's where I came. I was hoping you were going to have the other opposite opinion,
Nope.
because
Yeah.
all right.
What's that zombie cleric, black from...
Oh, I can picture the art.
Black
Yeah,
Withered
same.
Wretch.
Withered
Yeah,
Wretch, that's the
that's the
one.
one.
Hell
That's
yeah.
like pretty corner case.
The
but
OG Scoos, baby.
yeah, that's gonna be one of the ones that gets into zombies.
Former
Yeah,
format
it's
staple.
yeah. Black for a 2/2. For a generic mana, you can exile a card from a graveyard. I wouldn't play this in most decks unless I was on zombies or clerics, just because it's like pretty niche. Although, because there's so much in terms of graveyard synergy in all decks, maybe this card is better than I think it is.
Well, you get Timurit now, right? Is
Yeah,
that just not?
I think that card Timurit's likely better.
Yeah,
It gains life.
it's more expensive.
Right.
It's more expensive. I imagine every deck
Right.
playing.
Well, you also get 2 cards.
Yeah.
So like the ratio's the same, but it's not as
Yeah,
granular,
I
I guess.
absolutely agree that Timurit's a better card. I think every deck that plays Withered Wretch is... Well, that's not even true, because Withered Wretch is a zombie, so I'll give you that. But most decks, like if you're a non-tribal deck playing the Wretch, you will probably play
I actually think Timurit's probably just a fine card,
Yeah,
honestly.
Card's great. It's got a bit... well, I mean, by itself, it's a 2/2 that gains you life and hits their graveyard. That
think
sounds
that's fine.
pretty good to me.
Well, and it's got upside to just like absolutely be a brick wall, right?
Yeah. Like, you follow this up with... I mean,
Phyrexian
I don't
Arena.
like, yeah, not Ashiok, but let's say Ashiok. Like even
A
I don't know, a
Liliana.
Liliana. You play this into Liliana: The Last Hope. Like, how are they ever doing anything relevant to your board? Cards that I tend to like that hit the graveyard. This kind of goes to the next segment. My favorite ways of exiling the graveyard are Yawgmoth's Will,
Whoa.
Underworld
against them. Not,
okay, sorry. Scrabbling Claws, Phyrexian Furnace, Eggs.
Exactly.
No. When it actually matters.
Oh,
not
Time
just to draw a
Time
card.
Twister. It puts their graveyard back to their deck.
No, Ben, you don't get it.
Combo uses graveyard. The combo section, I honestly just wanted to put in my notes, combo uses graveyard, because
Done.
it's kind of the most straightforward of this collection to use the graveyard.
And we're not just talking like the classic like Entomb, Big Dummy, Reanimate, Big Dummy.
No, but that's fine too.
Yeah.
but like using basically most spell-centric combo decks use the graveyard.
And they use it all at once.
Yeah, or a lot, or repeatedly.
Yeah.
Like often, the graveyard's great at causing loops.
Yeah.
Be it something like eggs, where you have a spell that returns everything that has gone to the graveyard this turn back, which then returns your spell. And you just keep doing it over and over again. Or, even stuff like Storm's not a loop, but sure feels like it. I guess Underworld Breach LED Brain Freeze is kind of loopy.
Hermit
I'd say so.
humans.
Hermit. Like there's different ways to do it, but a lot of them just use it.
And I've seen a huge uptick in the intuition gifts based recursion decks, like that aren't even necessarily just using like intuition or gifts to search for 3 or 4 of the same card.
Yeah.
And using recursion that way. I've seen them like trying to like get like Sevrek is a big part of it, but they're
Can we just like slide Anger in here at some point? Big ups to Anger.
Yeah, shout out to Anger. Definitely made the dredge deck tick, or one of the cards that makes the dredge deck tick.
What a weird
my
card
angry hammer baby
from a weird cycle.
Yeah.
Anger is a judgment card. 3 in a red for a 2/2. That's not very good. It has haste, but as long as it's in your graveyard and you control a mountain, creatures you control have haste. So classic, being in the bin, making stuff that comes out of your bin get haste.
Yeah, just sits there, provides value.
Yeah, this baby's been doing this since the beginning.
He's so ugly.
I mean, yeah, but he's beautiful on the no, not even on the
Face
inside.
You think
Only
that's
the Planeswalker.
the zone that creatures go through when they're being summoned, and the baby just like hits them with the hammer and then makes them go fast, and just like accelerates them through this summoning zone.
Jesus.
When they hit the battlefield, they're faster.
Graveyard use combo.
Graveyard use combo.
But to tie in the Savine's intuition pile too is that you don't have to just pop the graveyard like that, because like it can be used to similar to how like mid-range decks can just like slowly try to grind through. Like sometimes a combo deck has to just repeatedly cast its card and then they counter it and you're like, okay, well I'm going to Academy Ruins it back on top and try and do it again. And now with Hall of Heliod's Generosity, a symbol of his church, you can do it for other combo strategies too. Again, like Underworld Breach, the Phyrexian Unlife kind of Solemnity shenanigans. Yeah, the graveyard's pretty great.
What's it? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Mizzix's Mastery.
Go on. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's another graveyard utilizing strategy.
Spells.
I haven't actually ever seen anyone cast that card in
No,
Highlander.
but it's certainly shown potential. Mizzix's Mastery is 3 in a red sorcery. Exile target card that's an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. For each card exiled in this way, copy it, and you can cast it without paying its mana cost. Exile Mizzix's Mastery. And it also has Overload for 5 red. The big deal with this is for 3 in a red, you can cast
Enter the Infinite.
Yeah, you can cast Enter the Infinite.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
You can also... I played this in the Big Gay Electric Prince Moonstorm, like blue-red. Every time walk, you Blood Moon to hold them back. It was pretty strong in that. Like this cards like this, right? Again, being like, you can cheat on your mana. And you can also just cheat on the fact that you've already used this card.
I keep looking at this card, wondering if there's another card that you could play that isn't Enter the Infinite that would also be quite good.
I think you just have to sort instant or sorcery, convert a mana cost 10 plus.
I mean, this is a 2-card combo with Dragonstorm.
Or just sort by CMC descending.
Yeah.
That's just smart.
Because you like cast this into Dragonstorm, you get Storm 2, and that's enough to...
That does win.
That does win, yeah.
It's pretty clean.
Speaking of winning, hopefully you will start winning more by utilizing your graveyard properly or learning to not...
neglect your opponents.
Yeah, just
pay attention to
just
what they got in the bin.
You know, it doesn't hurt to pay a little bit more attention to it. You
Or
know?
a little bit more mana for that dig through time, you know?
Yeah, treat yourself. Anyways, moving on to our recurring segment of powerful magic. We have Jeremy up to bat. Jeremy, what you got?
All right, I got a two-parter. Same deck. Recently, I've been jamming a new Thassa's Oracle combo brew, similar to the one that took second down at the Snohomish 1K. I talked to the people there who were brewing it, and I pointed out some things they missed. They pointed out some things I missed. It was a great talk, and I settled on this list. And so I was playing it on Magic Online for a bit. The first one I was playing against known MTGO Canlander Crusher Lowman 02. And he was playing, I didn't know what he was playing. I think it was game one, or maybe game one we just won very quickly. But in my hand I had a couple lands, a sleight of hand, a demonic consultation, and I think another card. I think we're on a mull to 6.
Okay.
So he plays I think he was on mono red. Now that I think of it, he plays mountain and plays a dum-dum. And I'm like, sleight of hand, and before like the sleight of hand resolves, both players have to pass priority. I'm like, Thassa's Oracle, and sure enough, Thassa's Oracle, top card on the sleight of hand, click, leads to an easy turn 3 victory. So sometimes you just gotta get what you ask for.
Wow.
That's the pinnacle of always lucky.
See, usually when that happens to me and I call the card and I see the card, and then I especially with sleight of hand on Magic Online,
click the wrong one.
Oh yeah.
I did that earlier.
For those of you that haven't cast sleight of hand on Magic Online, just take a second to read it, because you will leak some feel bads.
Especially because when you're casting stuff like Ponder or stuff like that, you click the opposite order you want the cards.
Yeah.
And so many times with Ponder, I've clicked the card I've wanted, and then it goes third from the top, and I'm like, no!
I'm a big idiot. Please make your gameplay intuitive to help big idiot.
And so the second one, second part 2, I'm playing against somebody else. I'm resolving a Tainted Pact I'm resolving a Tainted Pact with a demonic consultation in hand.
Okay.
Oh my god.
So the trick here is you Tainted Pact for the Oracle, cast the Oracle, then demonic consult.
Yeah.
Get your deck gone.
Yeah.
So I'm going through and I'm just autopiloting because I'm on stream and I'm chatting.
Oh boy.
Looking at chat. I'm just hitting no a bunch because don't see Thassa's Oracle. Eventually I see Thassa's Oracle, take it. I have no cards left in my library, and I did it on their end step.
I had that happen.
The highest of highs, the lowest.
I played against the player that got second with this deck on Magic Online, and they beat me game 1, and then game 2 they did that, and they just Tainted Pact. And the way that it works is that it reveals the card. And then the way that basically they're like, yeah, one card left in my deck. Yes, please.
And because it's still in your library while it's being revealed, it looks like there's one card left. So you're like, oh yeah, I can go down one more.
Yep.
But no, it was the last card.
Yep.
And then
I won that and then lost the last one. So I lost 3-0. Or sorry, I got 3-0'd, which is such a horrible feeling.
Yeah. For scientific purposes, I count it as a win because that's a mistake you just don't make in paper,
Yeah.
Does that feel as bad as when you're trying to go off with Lab Maniac?
Mm-hmm.
I did this to Brett Frankson. He has Lab Maniac, no cards in library, and he cycles Edge of Autumn. And in response, Pyrokinesis. That felt really good.
That's why Thassa's Oracle is so busted, because you just can't interact with it. You need a stifle.
You know what'll never happen with Thassa's Oracle?
That.
Another Brett Frankson, where he doomsdays, sets up, and his last cantrip is Sorceress Sight, which is a peak that can only target opponents. But I have a True Believer in play, which gives me Shroud, and so he just can't do it. Anyways.
Oh my god.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and watching this. And just a reminder that this was all brought to you in part by you from the Patreon, patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Thank you very much, and we will see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Later.